Let's take a look at a diagram of the micropost data model. The first field here is the ID, which comes for free in Rails. We saw this in the context of the user model as well. The next field is the content field. This is what will contain the actual content of the micropost, which will actually be limited to 140 characters. So technically we could use a string, which on most systems can hold 255 characters. But the entry field for this content, as we saw in lesson 2, is a text area. And so this is more naturally thought of as a text field in that context. This also gives us some flexibility. If we decide to relax the restriction of 140, it'll be easy to accommodate that choice. And finally, there's no performance difference between text and string in the context of a PostgreSQL database, which is what we're using in production. The next field is a user ID. In the context of database modeling, this is known as a foreign key. This is an integer that identifies the user this micropost belongs to. And then finally, we have these magic columns created at and updated at that we get automatically by running a Rails migration. Speaking of which, let's make that migration. We'll actually do it as part of generating a model. You may recall from lesson 6 that generating a model automatically generates a migration. So the model is micropost, remember singular for models. And then we can add the content, which is text, remember. And then we could do this. We could do user ID integer, just following the diagram here. But there's actually a way to tell Rails that we want this to be an association by doing this. We can omit the ID part and just say user colon references. Let's take a look at the migration that made. You can see here t.text content and our timestamps here that come for free, that's created at and updated at. These guys here. But then we've got t.references user, and you can see that it puts an index on it automatically. Remember in lesson 6, we put an index on the email attribute of the user model. In that context, our immediate motivation was to enforce email uniqueness at the database level, but as a side effect, we also got efficient lookup when we did find by email. And that's why this is here automatically. Anytime you have an association, it's going to be required to find by this user ID here. So Rails automatically puts in an index. There's actually a second thing I want to do here, though, related to indices. We're not just going to be finding microposts with a particular user ID. We also want to order them by the time they were created. So that means that we want to include created at in an index. And there's a way to include both of them in a single index. So I'm going to add index on microposts and then give it a hash of symbols corresponding to the attributes. Because we're going to be finding by both of these attributes, we can put them together to form what's called a multiple key index. Save that and run the migration.